Hello everyone, this is DJ Thid, and I'm here for yet another Rayman Legends basic movement tutorial. And today we'll be touching on the ground pounding move in this game. Obviously, the obvious thing the ground pound does is that it just launches you downward with a giant hitbox. That's like the most obvious thing everyone should know by now. It's a pretty intuitive move, so it shouldn't take long to learn how it works in the game for its intended purpose. But I am going to go over some things in this video that aren't intended uses for the ground pound. There are multiple ways to use the ground pound that are helpful in ways that isn't just launching you downward at a high rate of speed. And the first thing that I'll discuss today is that ground pounds, they have a unique trait with them. When you use a ground pound, it raises your body up a bit when you use it. Raises your hitbox. I'll show you what I mean. So you see that platform up there? Without roll jumping, it's impossible to get up to it, or wall climbing with kicks and all that. But with normal wall jumps, I can't get up here. It's impossible without roll jumping or wall climbing. But if I were to say ground pound right at the apex of my jump, I can land on this platform, and that's because your ground pound in the animation where he starts raising his fist and starts basically shoving his entire body towards the ground, making him fall really fast. It raises him up higher than he was before, slightly, and it allows him to get up to raised platforms like this, like the thin platforms that you can jump through from underneath. You can just ground pound and you just land on it. It actually does bring you up pretty high, to be honest. I mean, it's not super high, and it's actually not that useful in a lot of places in the run, but it's actually something you should know anyway, because it can save you in situations where you might mess up a jump. So in Deadly Lights here, I'm in Deadly Lights right now. Alright, so this is how this part of the level is usually done optimally. I'll have to make sure to get that teensy in the bottom left there. If I miss them, then the run's over. Yeah. And as you could have probably seen there, I did actually do a roll jump there, and it could have made it just fine without ground pounding. But it is still quicker to ground pound before... let me just kill this guy. This guy's kind of annoying. So, while roll jumping up here is possible, it is still slower because... And you still have airtime, and you can't really drift towards the left side of the platform until you land. So, it's still optimal to ground pound on the left side of the platform and immediately jump over the tube on the left. Like that, and just ground pound. So ground pounding is also useful for positioning yourself correctly in situations like that. But if you miss the roll jump, it's no big deal, because you can still make it, unless you fuck it up like that. Yeah. Another quick note I did forget to mention was a ground pound hitbox does also raise up with you, so you can attack enemies that are above you with a ground pound. For example, I can do this and grab the teensy and just ground pound immediately after. It's faster than doing the up air attack and then ground pounding after. Alright, now we're back at my old reliable stage. At this point I've used this level 3 times now. It's Creepy Castle, level 2 of World 1. So this level has a few bumpers that you ground pound on, and if you don't ground pound on bumpers, you don't go as high. So you see, I go about this high if I don't ground pound on them. If I do ground pound, I go a lot higher. In this part of the level, an optimal strat is to ground pound on this bumper here, but there's no real easy way to do that from above. As you can see, I try to ground pound, and I can't really do that optimally. It's hard, and it's also slower to do it like this. The faster way to do it is to ground pound underneath it. And like I said before, ground pounds raise your body up a little bit. So you can ground pound from underneath. As you can see there, it might have just looked like I actually just jumped into it, but I actually did do a ground pound, if you looked at my inputs on the bottom left. Yeah. You can miss it sometimes, but yeah. It's just a really useful technique, because jumping up here is a little bit slower. It's actually not that slow, to be honest. So if you aren't comfortable with ground pounding underneath bumpers, you could just jump in, roll jump up here, and just do this. But ultimately, after getting the cage that's up there, you just want to jump up here and ground pound underneath it and just get the teensy. as you can see, I do miss the ground pound on the bumper quite a bit at that specific point, because weird thing about bumpers in this game, that's what we call these things that you bounce on and you have to ground pound to get higher. Those are bumpers. The weird thing about bumpers in this game is that their hitboxes are actually square-shaped. For as far as I know and tell, anyway. Like, it feels like they're square-shaped and that they're rotated, depending on the angle that they launch you. So it's usually easier to ground pound in, like, the middle of this rotated bumper. But if you try to ground pound on the side of it, it's going to be a little bit harder because the corners are a little bit higher up of the square because it's rotated. So that's something to keep in mind when trying to ground pound under these bumpers. Usually you wouldn't notice this in normal gameplay, but when ground pounding you do notice it quite a bit. I don't know why I was missing it there, huh? It's kind of strange. Yeah, bumpers are weird. It looks like you go into it, but it just doesn't work. A sure way to actually get this is to wait until close to your apex of your jump. If you wait to the apex, you actually don't get the ground pound because you have already jumped into it. But when it's close to the apex, ground pound, and then you get it. In this spot, in this level, just a little bit further from where we were, as you can see, those are the bumpers. We have this nice little section where the ceiling is really close to us. We could just jump right into it. And this will be a nice place to show off the next technique with the ground pounds. A nice little quirk that they have. So, again, like I've said before, ground pounds raise you up, but that would create some weird interactions when you're right up against the ceiling. So, for example, as you can see, my ground pounds are instantaneous when I do ground pound right up against the ceiling. And if I'm not, I actually have to wait a little bit, because Rayman stalls in the air a little bit when he does a ground pound. Like, he just floats there for like about 10 frames or something like that. It's not a long amount of time, but it's something to keep in mind. Rayman stalls in the air. He doesn't fall until he starts falling at terminal velocity, which is his max fall speed that his ground pound allows. But there are at some points in levels where you want to touch the ceiling and immediately ground pound when you're touching the ceiling, because that's faster than waiting the 10 frames it takes for Rayman to actually do the ground pound normally when he stalls in the air. Because how this works is when Rayman tries to raise up a little bit when he's in the ground pound animation, he starts to go inside the ceiling. So I assume the game wants to cancel that animation, because if he goes in the ceiling, he'll die immediately if he clips through anything. That's just how this game works. So if he clips through the wall or ceiling, he just explodes. So a way for this game to prevent that from happening is just to let the ground pound just happen immediately, instead of having Rayman clip inside the ceiling. This is how I assume it works. And with that, there's not much more for me to go over with ground pounds. There is a ceiling up here, by the way, right at the lobby, that you can just instant ground pound on. But yeah, there's not much for me to go over, so I'll just go ahead and end the video right now. Hopefully you guys learned something new today that was useful. I can't say these techniques are like that common in the speedrun of this game, like 80%, but I think they're pretty common in like the Rayman Legends Challenges mode. Like, I know for sure, like, they're very, very common in like the tower speed challenges. You have to know the ground pound techniques there. And I think Neverending Pit has some of those instant ground pound techniques to help speed up your time by a few frames. But other than that, like in an actual speedrun of the game, it's not that common. But there are some places where they are applicable, so hopefully you learned something. And with that, I will stop the video. See you guys later.